Giant stalker, dragon stalker, crypt stalker, demon stalker, rift stalker, grown stalker, crypt stalker, scourge stalker, wind runner. I'm a bone elite skill hunter. A death dealer, a life stealer. That's just the cost of being.
Welcome to episode 149 of the Hunting Party Podcast, I'm not Euripides from WoW Insider, Out DPS, or Call to Auction, but he will be here later.
Maybe.
And I'm Darkbrew from thebrewhall.com and the Brewhall on Twitter.
And this is Frostheim from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frostheim WHU on Twitter.
I am Ollie Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast.
Yay.
And today is Saturday, November the 3rd, 2012. When did it become November all of a sudden, by the way?
3 days ago.
Yeah.
Beat you to it.
Anyway, if you want to participate in the chat room but aren't registered, just go ahead and again, just like the last time, just type a /wave BRK in the chat window and you'll be prompted to register because BRK is here and you can wish him a warm welcome.
And speaking of the chat room, we are joined today in the live chat room by Avarice, Eligerwolf, BM Jager, Elapide, Memphis, Melganis, Foxtrap05, Grier, Homer Jade, JC Sway, Oxander, Pog Melganis, Sabero, Shroud Viber, Slugslinger, Tagurit1, Warvinny, Zodamus, and of course many other anonymous guests. And as always, your lovely moderator, Ollie Sonder. If you have any questions for BRK or any topics you want us to discuss, although we have a lot of ground to make up, please send it in a private message to Ollie Sonder, and she'll determine which ones get asked, because assuredly they can't all get asked. And she will rank your questions based on your answer to, I think, this question this week. Let's take a little poll here. Do you think that Beast Mastery hunters are going to get over-nerfed in patch 5.1?
Oh, I don't like that question.
It's a. I think the danger exists.
I don't like the potential answer to that question. The question is okay, as long as the answer is no.
Well, you know what? Do we want to get straight into the news that's relevant to over-nerfing BM?
Yes.
So obviously we've missed the past couple of weeks, so we have a lot of news to catch up on. But I think the big one that's really pertinent right now is in patch 5.1. There's a handful of sometimes nerfs, sometimes just changes to BM hunters that Blizzard kind of came out and went, yeah, in PvP right now, BM A has a little too much burst, and B, that burst doesn't require skill. You can just set up a macro, and you can go Stampede, Big Red Pet, Lynx Rush, Rabid, and just burn someone down. And there's not a lot they can do about it unless they have some kind of like immunity. And yeah, it's a combination of it's too much burst and the fact that it's not like it takes a lot of skill to do it. You just hit your macro, bam. And so they came up with a bunch of changes to hopefully leave overall damage the same, but lower burst. And those include, they changed Lynx Rush so that it's now a bleed effect that causes damage every 3 seconds over a period of 15 seconds and stacks up to 9 times. So it's a stacking bleed effect. Has anybody verified whether the pet still goes to different targets, or does it just apply them all to one target?
I don't know. I haven't been on the PTR, so I'm not really sure how it works. My guess is it's going to go from target to target to target, like it does now. But
right.
I'm not 100% sure.
But so the whole point is Lynx Rush is now spreading that damage out over a longer period of time. And they're changing Rabid so that it increases attack speed of your pet instead of attack power. And so here's the alarming thing. So they've got like these changes, and there's a couple other little changes going on. And of course, well, let's keep in mind they are getting rid of Aspect of the Fox and just having that ability built in. But so the concern is they're doing this stuff to reduce burst, to make BM less bursty. But then after these changes go live on the PTR, they suddenly realize that, oh, there's actually a bug with Stampede in arenas, only in arenas. In arenas, Stampede does 4 times the DPS that it's supposed to. Literally 4 times as much. And what happened when they changed Stampede and doubled or halved the cooldown and doubled the duration, they then cut the damage by 75%. Well, apparently in arenas, They got the double duration and half cooldown, but they didn't get the damage reduction. So now they went, whoops. They fixed that bug. But part of me is wondering, like, well, wait a minute. If you fix that bug, doesn't that right there kind of take care of your bursts? Stampede doing 4 times the damage it should? Do we maybe not need these other burst reduction things that you put in? And we haven't seen anything on that. I'm just concerned that if they thought these other changes were going to take care of the burst issue, and then they discover this huge bug that they fixed, a little concerned. And keep in mind, this is not supposed to affect overall DPS, although assuredly this will affect overall PvP DPS because Stampede was just doing too much. But it is going to have a huge impact on the blowing all cooldowns at once burst possibility of BM.
Well, what about Link's Rush now with this change in PvE? So is the overall damage of the ability unchanged, or is it actually going to be less?
It's supposedly unchanged-ish, about the same, but I haven't actually seen anybody who's gone into the PTR and reverse engineered it and actually measured the damage of Link's Rush. Now, keep in mind, the fact that it's a bleed means... Oh, actually, do we still have the bleed debuff? Holy cow, I completely forgot.
No, we don't.
Yeah, that went away. So it's not going to benefit from that either. So yeah, it's I don't know. We basically need to wait for somebody to get into the PTR and reverse engineer both that and the rabbit. But sometimes they say, like, oh, this is going to do about the same damage, and it doesn't.
By the way, Frost, you cut out for about 5-7 seconds.
And of course,
there.
the great big... oh, what was I saying when I cut out?
I don't recall. Something about... We the last thing we sort of talked about was the bleed.
Right.
Did we have the bleed debuff? We don't have the bleed debuff. We know that that they got rid of that.
No. So I was just saying that sometimes Blizzard makes a change where they say this is just a change, the damage will be about the same, and it turns out not to be the case. So until we actually measure it, we don't know for sure if the overall PvE damage is going to be unchanged. But certainly the loss of 4 times Stampede damage is something that BM hunters are going to feel immediately because that bug fix supposedly went through in arenas. But we did get
that's on live now. Yeah, you're right. I think they hot fixed that this week or something.
Mm-hmm. And something they clearly didn't want to mention until they fixed it because they didn't want people going, oh, really? And that's going to get fixed soon? Let me just go dominate things.
They did that already, though.
Yes.
Yes, they
if
fixed it.
If you haven't been on YouTube and watched 2v2 with 2 BM hunters, that's funny. You got to get yourself some of that. I laughed my butt off. That was just phenomenal because they were blowing up paladins like they were firecrackers. And there's anybody hates more than a paladin. So you got to get yourself some of that.
Yes. And it's yeah. And it was a lot of the complaints were 2v2 oriented, which obviously Blizzard doesn't do a lot of balancing for 2v2. But I mean, it was an issue across the board. Just the burst was too big, and now we know Stampede doing 4 times the damage, which for a 20-second ability, that's huge. But we did get the huge buff of Aspect of the Fox removed. We're going to be able to cast Steady Shot and Cobra Shot and Barrage while moving with no penalty for now, although they have said they're going to keep an eye on it and see if that makes Hunters too tough, because it is kind of a substantial change in what Blizzard has talked about in the past of their philosophy of DPS on the move. If we want to hit up some of the other changes...
One second.
Yeah.
What do we do in PvE against every single stinking raid boss? We move, right? It's all about the big dance. So we don't want you to stand still, but we don't want you to DPS if you're moving. Someone needs to give them a great big slap and make them pick one or the other.
Well, I think their philosophy was that ranged... In fact, I think it was stated pretty clearly, ranged DPS while moving should be terrible. Full stop. I think the idea is the skill and the strategy is supposed to be to find ways to limit your movement. Whereas if you can just move freely, nonstop, and DPS 100%, it ends up being a little unfair to the melee guys who have their own issues.
Well, unfair to the melee guys is something I can't wrap my head around because that's just stupid. Melee has to suffer like the tanks suffer, stand in the back and get out. So if the tanks can deal with it, melee can deal with it. As far as ranged, we are the only class, I believe, who can put 50% of our DPS into our pet, which is immune from most AoE, and doesn't have to move out of the fire. So telling a BM hunter that your DPS is going to suffer because you've got to move is really not the point, because half of our DPS isn't dependent upon our movement whatsoever. So giving me as a BM hunter the ability to cast Steady Shot while I'm moving, my DPS is going to do what? It's going to go up. It just is.
Yeah. And also there's the new glyph of Aim Shot, which will allow Aim Shot to be cast while moving, the
What's
hard
Aim
cast
Shot?
version.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's an excellent point. Actually, we're going to get into that when we get into
I was
the
surprised that they made
Ghostcrawler
that
Twitter comments.
a glyph. I mean, and when I saw the Steady Shot, Cobra Shot, Barrage change, I was like, well, what about? I was wondering where Aim Shot was on that list, and then they came out later and mentioned it was going to be a glyph. So I was kind of surprised that they wanted to glyph for it versus just making that default as well.
And interestingly, the one thing that's notably absent from being able to cast on the move right now is Power Shot,
Yes.
one of the level 90 talent choices, which nobody takes right now anyway, because Glaive Toss is better.
Yeah.
But that certainly cements Power Shot as something that just ain't going to be used. It's like, oh, but I can do everything else while I'm moving. And Power Shot, that's going to like lock me in place, and if I have to move, I'm going to cancel my cast. Screw it. So
The only
if it's-
reason Power Shot would be useful is if you could misdirect it on your priest.
which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that would be cool. That I would glyph for.
There's a whole bunch of like little minor ones. Rapid fire is being changed to increase ranged haste rather than attack speed, and that has got to be a tooltip clarification. Because I think
I wondered about
still
that too.
don't inherit.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. Same with like heroism, time warp, all that. They changed that too, and I don't think that that's really.
Yeah, I think they're just clarifying the wording, even though it's still a little confusing. It doesn't change what your pets inherit, which is obnoxious. But so it's effectively no change. Steady focus, which is the marksman 2 steady shots give you the haste bonus, is increasing to a 20-second duration, up from 10 seconds, which is huge. And this actually tumbles in with Ghostcrawler responded to a Twitter comment where somebody was complaining about marksman DPS and how horrible marksman DPS is. And right now, marksmen are definitely the redheaded stepchild of hunter specs. If you look at the raid logs across the board, they look like the BM hunters for the last 2 expansions, right? That no one's playing them. And they're way, way low. And Ghostcrawler kind of came back and went, well, for this fight, and this fight, Marksman is doing just as much damage as Beastmaster Survival is. They're like, but it's a lot harder to get that damage, right? Because it's more complicated, which is rough because hunters across the board, our rotations got hugely more complicated in Mr. Pandaria with all of these buttons. And one of the complexities of Marksman, in addition to just having more buttons, is juggling that haste uptime, and putting that to 20 seconds makes it really nice. Now, it's getting 2 steady shots in somewhere in a 20-second window. That's not so bad. We can do that.
So does it really? But so they feel like the marksman DPS is okay, I guess. I mean, this isn't really going to increase. This is really going to up the DPS for marksman. I mean, I don't know that we're going to see a switch to marksman.
This lowers the skill cap, is what it's doing. They're not increasing their DPS. They're decreasing the difficulty of achieving their optimal DPS. And let's see, Froststorm Breath, the Chimera AoE ability, did get its DPS nerfed pretty substantially. I think it's scaling, was it now 14.4% of RIP, down from 43%. So that's also, by the way, a stampede change. The idea was you don't want to be able to stampede a whole bunch of chimeras and do insane AoE.
Actually, you do.
Yeah, I was going to say, we sure do. It sounds like something I'd want to do.
That is the only other pet I deal with other than my spirit beast is I have a chimera, so when it's time to AoE stuff, you pop that out in Stampede and you hit your button, and that's like pretending you're a shaman. It's great. I love it. And of course, because I love it, they're nerfing it to the ground.
Of course.
Yeah, don't trick. When I say don't take credit for the nerfs, because pretty soon, come tomorrow, Monday, this will be your emails will be flooded with angry people saying, "Why did you do to my chimera?" Frost knows firsthand.
Yeah. This already happened before I said anything about it. And there was a whole bunch of bug fixes that were really, really minor and probably aren't worth calling out one by one. Just the big one was the bug fix to Stampede in arenas, and that has already happened. And of course, 5.1 is bringing in kind of a ridiculous quantity of new pet skins and rare pets that Petopia has been digging up left and right and left and right. And these aren't like cool, awesome rare pets. These are just like, oh hey, we never made a tameable thing of this skin for this pet. We'll toss that in there somewhere.
Yeah. Some of them also they're making the lowering the level with which you can acquire certain types of pets. Like I think the shale spiders now, there's going to be a much lower level shale spider available for hunters to tame, which means they'll get access to some of these buffs and pets earlier on in the process than they might otherwise. I mean, obviously, if you're level 90, it doesn't matter. But if you're a brand new hunter leveling up, you can now get certain buffs and certain pets a little bit earlier than when you otherwise could have, which is kind of.
But
nice.
I have yet to see anybody discover new spirit beasts. Which a long time ago we were told that new spirit beasts would be coming in patch 5.1. Before Miss even came out, we were told that it would be 5.1 when new spirit beasts came. I haven't seen anything on that. Have you?
Dark Brew, this is definitely your question.
What? No, I would not know. I've heard nothing of a new spirit beast, and which is fine because I don't know that I have the stable space to get one and put it in there. I'm all full up, but yeah, there was some discussion about that before Mists of Pandaria was released, but I haven't heard anything about any new spirit beasts. I don't know if you are aware of anything like that, BRK.
The only one I've heard about is Hexapos, and that's it. Do a Google search on Hexapos, Hexapos, and that's the only one I know about.
Well, I know like Chromagus is now available as a pet skin rather than having to go into Blackwing's lair with a raid to tame him. But yeah, I haven't seen the spirit beast yet. I'm waiting on that. It's probably also worth touching on just as a general newsworthy thing within WoW, and a really fascinating move is Blizzard did, for Korean servers only, separated the raid lockouts for 10-man and 25-man raids. So on the Korean servers, they can do both 10-man and 25-man, right? Which this was kind of the way things were in Wrath, and the complaint was a lot of people who did 25-mans, and they're making better gear, by the way, for 25-mans. That's the other big thing. It's not the same gear. But back in Wrath, the big thing was once you were able to do both, most people who were really trying to progress fastly felt like in order to optimally prepare, they had to do both, because then they could get loot twice as fast. And so the whole thing of tying the lockouts together was to be like, no, you cannot do both. You only need to raid one raid group a week per character. But yeah, the hardcore players, really kind of felt like they had to do too much raiding, which is interesting. But apparently for the Korean servers, they're like, okay, there you go. You'll get better gear in 25-man. You can do both. And to me, this is kind of like they're testing the waters of going back to this.
Yeah, I don't know why they chose that region to do this, but it would seem like if it works out there that they would implement it for everybody. Just make it like that. I know for us, where we're a fairly big enough guild and we want to do 25-man, would be a good change because it would allow some of us to do the 25-man and just do some things there, and then break out into 10-man and maybe try and do a little bit more progression rating and get some heroics done. But it gives us the option to support the bigger guild, and for people who aren't going to be into progression, we can kind of run them through and give them a good raid experience, but not interfere with the people that are just fanatic about it and want to do heroics and things.
That's the way it was for me for most of Wrath. For most of Wrath, it was our guild did a 25-man raid, but then we had a 10-man group that was our progression group, because take 25-man raid, pretty easy to find 10 people that are better than the mean of the 25. And so then we would go progress as far as we could, but we'd want to participate in the guild activity and the whole guild thing. And it was It was a little bit more casual, and I have mixed feelings because I kind of miss that. On the other hand, I didn't have to raid as much without it.
Yeah, and I mean, with you, BRK, you've done some of the LFR now, and you're just about ready to start doing the normal. I mean, is this a change that you think would be good or bad or don't care about? Does it impact how you raid? Or
I finished the first 6 bosses in LFR. I can't get into the next ones. My level's only 467 because I've still got some of my stupid PvP gear. LFR takes a lot longer than you'd think because of the lower level of skill people have when they first get in. Every time I do an LFR, half the raid dings an achievement for having completed it. So it takes a while. As far as I don't have time to do all 6 bosses on LFR and then do 10s or 25s. I would say I've done LFR. As soon as I get 470, I'm ready to raid 10-mans. I really am. I've had some bad luck in getting gear, but if you've got the time to run 10s and 25s, why not separate the lockout? I don't have a problem with that. If you want to get your really good gear in 25s and then run 10s and get lesser gear, that doesn't affect me at all. Do what you got to do.
Yeah, I think the more options they give, the more flexibility. Like, I would have been fine if, rather than doing it by raid size, they just did it by the level of difficulty. If they made LFR, normal, and heroics each on separate lockouts, and then you could do them regardless of whatever raid size that you wanted. I think that, to me, that would be a better change. But I don't know how Blizzard feels. I guess they probably want to keep heroics tied in. You know, once you start a heroic, you can't go back and do normal for that week. I don't know. But to me, I think that would be a better change and give you more flexibility. So you can do 10 or 25. You know, normal, it doesn't matter. You could start as 25, break down to 10. But, you know, if you've got a group that's doing hard modes, you could do your heroics that same week as well. I know for our guild, like I said, that just gives us ultimate flexibility.
Yeah. So going on the topic of Ghostcrawler tweets, which, you know, Ghostcrawler has not been as active as he was that very first week he got on Twitter, but we still got a bunch of Hunter-related responses from him. One of them was on the question of, will we get more stable slots? And Ghostcrawler's response was, I'm torn on that. It's fun for hunters, but your pet is supposed to be your boon companion, not a list to fill out. So...
And now we're going to give you 5 more ultra-rare Spirit Beast tames.
Exactly. And, you know, after we talked last time, which was like 3 weeks ago with BRK, and we were talking about the zoo, right?
Yeah.
I sat there and did some math, and I was like, oh, if you go under the theory of deliberate taming challenges that Blizzard has given us, whether it's Spirit Beast or the current rare tames that you have to track or the Firelands ones, there are more of those than you have stable slots. So they kind of are creating this situation where it's like, ooh, you want to go out and try to collect them, and it's hard, and it's a cool thing if you have a bunch of them, but you can't keep them.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we need bigger stable slots.
Hey, we were just talking about you, or rather, we were just talking about people sending mixed messages.
Mixed messages, you say?
I'm saying you're a tease.
Oh, yes. Well, I did promise to stay out of your hair today, but I reneged on that promise. No, the work change that I was working on, these things always happen at the least convenient moments for me, but this one went very smoothly, so I was able to catch the tail end of the podcast, which is awesome.
Excellent. Well, we're actually going through right now Ghostcrawler tweets, and we just went over.
We can just do a whole podcast just about that, really.
Well, and there's so Ghostcrawler he answered the question, but his answer was, I have no idea. He's kind of sounds like Ghostcrawler saying, I see both sides. On one hand, we don't want you to just collect endless pets. On the other hand, I understand that you guys think it's fun, but, you know, personally...
Who has the other side, though? Where you just said, we're going to give you an endless collection of pets, and we're going to tease you with them, and then we're going to create a situation where you can't have them. That's like, you know, holding your kid's Halloween candy on the upper shelf, saying, good job collecting all that candy, but you can only have one piece a day. You're just trying to kill them. That's what we're dealing with.
Which basically means you're a bad parent.
No,
Well,
that means you're a good parent. That's
No.
exactly what you should do. If you give your kids
No.
too much candy, they get toothaches. Unlike candy, however, pets don't give you toothaches. At least they shouldn't.
They give you
No.
what?
They give you WOV, and if you don't have enough stable slots, they give you heartaches.
They do. I mean, they should maybe at least give us enough stable slots to have one of every buff, because that's really what a lot of people are filling up their, well, at least the people that raid, that's what we're filling up our stable slots with, and then just figure out a number of additional slots beyond that would make sense. But 25 isn't working. I mean, we filled up our 25 slots in Cataclysm.
Well, yeah, but no, I mean, it seems to me it's not the buffs. We have plenty of stable slots for our buffs. It's if they're going to create these taming challenges, you should expect that's like a design from a design perspective, right? It's like I create this design, and I would expect the behavior that would react to that would be the certain kind of people who like collecting pets will feel the need to get them all. And so it's, I don't know. It seems like what the players who play the game want is to be able to keep their pets. And I don't really see any negative to letting players have 50 pets or 100 pets or a zoo or cryogenically frozen pets or whatever.
Eventually there could be negatives on the technology side, but because they were willing to introduce void storage as a way around those negatives, they could just introduce a system that had the same thing where, you may be, because you remember how when you tame a pet, it keeps some, like back in the day, you used to have certain pets that might keep buffs or something like that. That indicates that behind the scenes they're actually storing something on your account. Whereas void storage, all they're storing is just a reference to an item that you have basically recreate when you pull it out. That's why all the enchants and stuff are stripped off. So they could come up with some system that made more sense for pets than void storage, but some system that used the same back-end technology to basically delete your pet and then recreate it as you need in order to put it into your stables. Now let me ask you guys a question. What if this came at the expense of our 25 stable slots? What if we were able to have a farm which acted like a void storage, and your pets would get deleted when you put them in there, recreated when you took them out, but you could only carry back to 3 or 5 pets on you at any given time?
Well, see, it's funny because I think
5 because of Stampede, but go ahead.
Well, it's funny because I was just going to comment on the fact that back in the day when we had 3 slots and we had to go to the dang stable master to switch any pet out, you wouldn't have had this problem because it was just understood. There is a bajillion pets, and you got to choose. Frankly, you got to choose 2 because you need a slot open to pick up training for the other pets. And it's the fact that we have 25 stable slots now makes us feel like, but I need to be able to have all of them that I want. I think that we need to have a stable that at least lets us cover the buffs. I would be willing.
I think I would be okay with them making us choose which buffs we want to bring. So there have to be a bit of coordination and a bit of intelligent thought between, instead of just loading your stable up with whatever, one of each, which would just be something that you have to do as soon as you hit level 90. They could make it so that you have to choose which 5 buffs are most valuable for you, bearing in mind your raid group, including the other hunters that you run with. But at the other hand, you can store a much larger, potentially unlimited number at some farm or something.
I kind of feel like with the current design of hunter pets, hunters need the ability to really easily bring whatever buff the raid needs. Although, I mean, to be fair, right now, we have 5 pets that we carry around with us.
Yep.
And so we're bringing 5 to the raid. So, whether you have to get them out of void storage to populate them or go to your stable master, you could argue that 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
I mean,
Yeah,
in
that's a good
25
point.
man, chances are all the buffs are going to be covered regardless of
Yeah.
what pet you bring. It's the 10 mans where you're forced to bring specific 1 or 2. At least when we do 10 mans, I either have to bring a spore bat or a hyena right now, based on the people
Awesome,
that have been
by
going.
the way.
Which is the spore bat at least. Yeah, the hyena, whatever. But
But the spore bat, I mean, that just made my day when they announced that spore bats had a really useful raid. I'm like, oh, this just makes me so happy.
And it's funny because I don't know how many people remember this, but back in my day, there was a point in time, and this was before pets brought raid buffs, and every pet had a special ability, and some of them were PvP abilities, and some of them were PvE abilities, and there was a pet that was best, so everybody brought a cat, and then everybody brought a wolf. But back in the day, there was this little window of time where the spore pet didn't have an ability, and It was literally, it didn't do anything. It was a pet without even a stupid, pointless ability. It just didn't have one, which was the original impetus behind the Spore Bat video.
Even when they gave it one, it was nothing to write home about.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on with some of the tweets. And this one, I think, is going to be close to a lot of people's hearts. So somebody asked Ghostcrawler if there would be any improvement to hunters in PvE, seeing as all the top guilds have their hunters in last place on the damage meters, which is when you read something like that, the word all is in there, you know it's hyperbole. And Ghostcrawler came back and said, well, hunters are right up there at the top on bosses 2, 3, and 4. And then he went further to say they look even better if you consider the incoming druid nerfs.
Which I applaud.
Yeah, right now.
Wholeheartedly.
I knew there was a reason to like you, BRK.
Yeah.
Right now, if you look at raid logs, hunters are kind of in the middle-ish of the pack. Marksman hunters are way down at the bottom of the pack. But, BM and survival, they're right in there in the middle. I feel like that's not the right place, because I feel like if you start looking at, instead of looking at all specs, you look at just the best spec for each class, then hunters get chunked down a little. And then obviously it changes a little if you're looking at 10-mans or 25s or normals or heroics. But it is absolutely true. If you think hunters need to be in a higher position, one way to achieve that is to move somebody in a higher position to a lower position. So we will have to see what happens post 5.1.
Now, when I do an LFR and I see myself as number 1, 2, or 3 DPS, I know we're going to wipe because we don't have the DPS necessary to kill the boss. If I see myself down around 13, 14, 15, well, then I get mad because I shouldn't be down 13, 14, and 15, but the bosses fall over like tissue. So
you can't win.
Yeah, so 5, 6, 7, I feel like I'm contributing and I'm doing a good job, but I'm not Drek. Now, when I suddenly see some warrior doing 120,000 DPS, well, I want to nerf. And when I see that mage doing 130,000, well, he needs to go. But if I'm fighting around 45, 50, 55,000 DPS, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And I'm happy with that, and I don't really care about my position. But if I'm doing 40,000 and I'm number 2, I'm ready to bail, because I know we're just going to stink.
So somebody else asked whether Blizzard was satisfied with PvP, and went on to say, class has never been so unbalanced. BM Hunter and Warrior can one-shot every single class with a macro.
Nice.
And
I want to try that before they nerf it.
It's been nerfed.
That sounds like a T-shirt more than a complaint.
Anyhow, but Ghostcrawler said, we're worried about the BM Hunter PvP burst and Warriors maybe. We agree that Warriors and Hunters should be viable, but macroing all cooldowns together is neither fun, interesting, nor skillful. Although I gotta say, it's fun for a lot of Hunters that do it.
Praise Jesus. Let me bring that up. First PvP, depending on where you're doing the PvP, is either incredibly useful or incredibly awful. All right? Alterac Valley. I would guard a graveyard, and I would do it all by myself. Why? Because my purse damage would ensure that no single one, and mostly 2, horde, let's call them out for what they are, could take over my graveyard. That's awesome. Now, when my burst damage trying to break through Drekthar and Keep, that's no good. I got 400 healers sitting there. Once I'm done with my burst, I'm exhausted, so I'm more useless there. My burst PvP can be applied strategically to help my side better in some places than other. Now, we're talking about arenas, and when I saw those 2 PvP BM Hunters just obliterating stuff, all right, I understand that. But eliminating burst damage, or saying it's too high, eliminates the idea that we apply this burst damage strategically, whereas if we nuke it for Hunters so much, we're useless everywhere. I disagree with him completely where he says it's no fun for everyone. It is very fun. You've got to be able to apply it properly.
That's true. It's always fun for the person who's got the advantage, and certainly with the Stampede bug, I think it's fair to say that BM did. So another player immediately replied to that and said, nothing to worry about, really. BM aren't overpowered at all. And I think Ghostcrawler had a good response to this, where he said, we don't like the BM, quote, skill macro, i.e., the macro where you burn every single cooldown all at once and win.
Because no
It's
other
like-
class uses a burn every cooldown macro. Far be it from those bad. Anyway.
But then he continues to say, but WoW also has a storied history of videos that demo what their makers want them to demo. And the point here is, like, because I actually saw a while ago that 2v2 BM Hunter thing. It's like, well, to be fair, back in the day when I was PvPing, which was BC, by the way, when I was doing arenas and stuff a lot, I could absolutely have recorded all of those arena matches and then cut together a video that showed us dominating. And, we won a little bit more than we lost. But you just cut all the ones where you just slaughtered someone together and it looks like something's broken, right?
Yes.
Well, in this particular case, that's not what's happening. If there is too much, and that's sort of a moving target to define that, but if there is too much burst from one particular class or spec, it leads to situations, because arenas are kind of a balance between a whole bunch of different factors, and they're not supposed to finish as quickly as they would with 2 BM Hunters. That said, 2s is gimmicky. Everybody knows it, and they don't balance around 2s. That's why your rating doesn't matter. No matter what rating you get in 2s, you can't use it to get anything important except for maybe, achievements. The 3s is where I can imagine that that burst being a problem. And even in 3s, having too much burst on one player is probably not that bad. It's just that if every comp that has a BM Hunter in it, every 3s comp that has a BM Hunter is statistically more likely to defeat players who are, have a higher MMR than them, that's something that they can track, and maybe that would indicate that there is a problem.
Right.
Well,
And
the problem is that they always say that they never want to make one specific class mandatory for PvP. And what happens? Every single time, they make one specific class mandatory for PvP, whether it's Rogues with Smoke Bombs or Mortal Strike or something, they always screw it up, and someone always gets screwed, and someone always comes out ahead. I had friends who used to do 2s with a Protection Warrior and a Holy Paladin, and they said, we're not going in there to win, we're going in there to drive the other person insane because they can't kill us for days. But now
I remember those Prot Warrior days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was
You
awesome.
can still do that.
They won nothing. They never won. But they would say, hey, we just had a 15-minute 2v2. The other guys threw their computer out the window in frustration.
Yeah.
Well,
That's part of the reason 2s is bored.
Yeah, well, switching specs briefly for a moment. I am totally confident, by the way, that Blizzard dearly regrets ever introducing the 2v2 bracket in BC. If they had just started, it was 3s and 5s, or it was just 3s. Arena is 3s. I think that's what they wish they had done.
I think they're thrilled to death. I think they love people getting angry and upset because it shows passion for the game. And that's what they really want, is our money. And we're only going to give them our money if we're passionate about it. So if they can create massively over-imbalanced 2x2s, and people go, yeah, this is awesome, 2 BM Hunters, and then everybody else screams their heads off, and then they switch it, well, then you got a whole bunch of angry hunters, and the rest of everybody else is really happy, and they get more money. I think they love it.
Well, switching specs for a moment. So the next question on Twitter to Ghostcrawler was about MM, where somebody said that MM is like unplayable because of the damage. They are so weak in PvP, actually. And Ghostcrawler's response was that MM's damage is virtually identical to BM and SV. It just asks a lot more of the hunter. It goes on to say we could potentially simplify the rotation. And I think we saw the first step toward that with the 20-second duration of focus fire.
So basically, you have to be a robot in order to play MM and just execute things.
You have to be an
flawless
advanced
timing.
You have to be an advanced robot. You have to be Kriparian.
You have to
But-
quit
I wonder, though, what he would say.
But it's worth pointing out that all the simulations we have kind of agree with him that MM is really close in theoretical damage, but it's still theoretically a little bit behind
Well, let's ask you
and
this
harder
question.
to play.
If you had your choice of 3 equal DPS specs, Marksman, Survival, or Beastmaster, which spec would you play? I would play Beastmaster because I love the pets. Most people, I think, would choose Survival because they like the lock and load and the like. But who would choose Marksman? He's a male-wearing mage.
I like
You
Marks.
would? I think
A lot of
most
people.
I
there's
think
a
that it
lot
would
of
be the third. I think it would be
Hold
third.
on. Aim shot is so much fun in PvP when it's not, garbage. like, especially when you can move in camo. It's just like, you're this invisible hunter that's just sort of wandering around, and then you can just charge up this like 3-second cast of aim shot, and then something dies because it always crits when they're over 80% health.
Well, now you know how a mage feels, though. That's exactly how a mage feels every time he goes up. If I can stay hidden and I can crit him with this, I can just get one crit. Dear God, please just let me get one crit. Oh, he's dead. That's how a mage feels. I mean, if you want to do that, play a mage. If you want to be a hunter, you got to use your pet.
Well, in the last, last couple of seasons,
I feel like MM has more adherence than survival does. I think a lot of that is due to a lot of people, their favorite spec, I've noticed, is the spec that they started playing, which is frequently whichever spec people told them was on top when they started raiding or whatever. So a lot of people who, back in Wrath days, they were told, you got to be marksman and stack your armor pen. These people are like, I hate Beastmastery. A lot of people were really upset when Beastmastery was on top, and it's just because, they like what they know. And Marksman was on top for a long time. It had all of vanilla, and it had a lot of Wrath, and of course Cataclysm.
This, though. Mm-hmm. The tweet that you were talking about, where he said MM is in line with the other specs, is that are harder to play. Was he still talking about PvP, or was he talking about on the dummy?
No, he was talking about their damage. So I think that means. I think he's clearly talking about like dummy damage, because it's really difficult to say what somebody's PvP damage output is.
And it's also not that relevant. The most important thing for PvP is burst, survivability, and I guess get out of jail free cards. Now that everybody has readiness and everybody has the same stuff, the only real variable is burst, survivability, and flavor. But I was going to say, because MM is more complicated, it's a lot easier to shut down an MM, or not shut down, but reduce the efficiency of a Marks PvP hunter, simply because all you have to do is, control them enough that they can't really get off their optimal rotation.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the next question that went via the Twitters was, in PvE, maybe in PvP, Marksman is so lower than BM, which got a lay on hands with Stampede heal ×4, and which got an insane burst. And Ghostcrawler's response was that Stampede heal is dumb. Other pet abilities are chilled out during Stampede. Well, no, what this is, remember, this was probably a reference to before. This is something else that was effed up with Stampede.
Yeah, they changed this already, didn't they?
They fixed it, yeah. Right, because all the pets were doing 75% less damage, but the heals were still doing 100%, and they went, whoops, we'll reduce the Stampede Spirit Beast heal to 75% lower, just like everybody else, all the other damage abilities should be.
So now, I guess, when did that change go in? Because I've done it recently, but not when I had enough damage being taken that I could tell the difference.
The heal still works. It's just It's supposed to be 75% lower for Spiritmen, for Stampede pet Spiritmens.
Yeah, but your original pet though is still at the full 100%, right? Okay,
correct. So there's a whole bunch of things about Stampede, a lot of which is kind of we already discussed, with the fact that they fixed the bug to Stampede, and talked about burst, but. Ghostcrawler did say, we think Stampede is okay as long as it's not with Lynx, Rush Rabbit, and Big Red Pet. Somebody was like, do you think Stampede lives up to the standard of other spells in WoW? Because a lot of hunters started complaining about Stampede, that Stampede is this awesome idea, but its implementation sucks, which is odd. I agree that it doesn't look as cool as it could, because your pets we discussed this 3 weeks ago, that you don't really get to see them.
Yeah, that was BRK's point.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of like a mechanical ability, Stampede is awesome burst for every hunter spec, and better for BM, just as it should be. And Ghostcrawler's only response was, hunters have been asking for it for years.
Which is his way of saying this. We've been asking for it. They're going to make sure it works and it's balanced. And
which obviously means that druid taming is just around the corner.
We've been asking for that for years too.
That's what I'm saying.
Even longer than Stampede.
Yeah.
That should have happened first. Minimum rage being deleted, stampede being added. These are things that you're right. We have been asking for a long time, but we've been asking for the ability to tame druids for even longer, and I think that would make even more people happy. Like you wouldn't have any comments on Twitter or the forum saying, it's great and it's really powerful, but is it really the right design? No, you would not have any of that. You would have people out on the streets telling people that don't play WoW how awesome this is. If you could, even if it was just a temporary, maybe they could replace Stampede with this. Instead of calling 5 pets, you just summon 5 nearby druids, and then they're your pets until the duration of Stampede is over.
I want to taste my Fury and Storm Rage so bad it's not even funny. I want to taste druid tears dripping down their chins. I kiss them and lick them up.
I've never wanted to tame an NPC druid, but anyways.
I have to nickname him MF?
Let's see. We can kind of probably ignore this stuff. The one thing, I don't remember if we talked about this last time or not, but with the whole removal of Aspect of the Fox and the stuff being Cobra and Steady being castable on the move, Ghostcrawler did have a comment that said, we might reintroduce sniper training if hunters never stop moving, but not for 5.1. So let me say,
stop moving. I'm going to keep on grooving.
Well, let me say this. So if you're a hunter in a raid, don't move when you don't have to, even though you can, just so that we don't get a limitation put on it.
I'm going to make a movement macro. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to run circles around the boss casting a steady shot all night long. I love that.
It's going to be like Burning Crusade, only moving. So do we want to hit... oh, wow. Do we have no Q&A, Ollie? We just have emails? Is that true?
That's true. You guys have answered every question.
Oh, in other words, people have asked questions, but we already talked about it?
No, you guys just are so good at podcasting that you've answered every question.
In other words, you guys just keep yapping your mouths so much. You answer every
do.
question. It's like monkeys
lying.
typing Shakespeare.
She's clearly lying.
So we do have a listener email. Do you want to grab that one, Dark?
Yeah, this is from Dome Splitter, and he had a question about the level 75 talents. And he says, hey guys, with mop rating in full swing, have you seen any numbers that supports using one of these over the other in terms of pure damage, particularly for the BM Hunter? And he wanted us to know about Blink Strike versus Lynx Rust versus Murder of Crows. And then he had an additional thought of Worgen versus Panda. So obviously he's the
absolutely.
Cool
this has been discussed and analyzed to death because there's a right answer for all of these. And actually, right now in rating, it is looking like Murder of Crows is the way to go. And certainly part of that has to do with the longer cooldown. Since this stuff uses a global cooldown to trigger the ability, that's an additional cost, and that's I think where Blink Strike really hurts, is because it's such a short cooldown. You're sucking up a global cooldown so often. But I think right now, by the math, Murder of Crows is usually the way to go for your talent choice. And in terms of Worgen versus Panda, it's Panda is the winner by the numbers right now. If you're talking
is that mainly because of the Epicurean, those fat pandas getting the double stats from their food, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's double stats from the foods. I mean, but certainly, I actually did kind of like a big, it was a while ago, but did a big analysis of all the races when we found out about Epicurean and stuff, of all the races and all the racials, and actually looking at both Alliance and Horde, and like in terms of like just raw awesome factor, Dwarves still won. But in terms of DPS numbers, then yeah, Panda.
So how far ahead are Pandas on DPS?
A little bit. It's Pandas, and then Worgens are just slightly behind.
And of course, the interesting thing with Pandas is they're both Alliance and Horde, so that's
well, Horde still is better off with Orc, of course, as always. Pandas aren't the number one race; they're the number one Alliance race for DPS.
Oh. I don't get that. When are they going to fix? Maybe I'll get my ass kicked.
Well, they did.
So when are they going to fix the orcs?
Actually, they nerfed orcs pretty hardcore. They nerfed the orc hunter, the orc pet racial, so far that orcs weren't in front by as much. So I mean, they did nerf it, and because it was getting really, 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 really ridiculous. But they're still in the lead over every single race. especially when BM is the spec to be.
And Murder of Crows is coming out ahead for even the BM hunters. I mean, I thought at one point Link's Rush was pretty close as far as rating was concerned. Is that not really the case?
You know, these abilities are not far apart. They did do a pretty fair job of not making one of them just blow or one of them just be ungodly better. But I mean, yeah, Murder of Crows is a little bit better. The downside is it does cost a big chunk of focus. But you know, it has that upside of you don't have to push that button so often. And you know, if you're BM, just make sure try to use it during Big Red Pet to eliminate that that cost. Certainly on the pull.
I mean, Blink Strike is also a fun ability, and I just sort of wonder on
really
encounters
fun.
Where you have a lot of ads and things, or your target switching. If that's not, I mean, I wonder how you factor in the fact that you can just instantly send your pet onto that target and have him pick up his DPS versus the transport time for him running from one guy to the other.
You got to keep in mind the transport time is a lot lower nowadays with the charge component of kill command, and the fact that you can hit the kill command before your pet gets there, and your pet does that charge in, and so the speed difference, assuming they're close enough for you to actually kill command, but the speed difference between Blink Strike and kill command isn't big, so it really depends. If you're switching targets like 5 times during a fight, probably not a big deal. If you're doing it nonstop, it probably adds up.
Yeah, and the kill command's nice, so I think Blizzard should feel free to increase that range from 25 to 40 yards or just whatever it is in line with our other shots.
That
would be, yeah, that would be nice because I mean certain things like Dire Beast had like a 40-yard range, and I mean it's more or less the same thing, right? You just summon your beast to the. I thought, well, because there's still times when you can actually be pretty far away from the mob, and I'm like hit kill command, going, why isn't it going off? And it's like, oh yeah, 25-yard range.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be enough sometimes.
That's true. The other thing that annoys me about kill command is that if your pet is on one target and you switch to another target, as far as I can tell, if you kill command, your pet will hit the target it's on, not the target you're attacking.
That's correct. You can make a macro.
Yeah, you can.
That will tell you to have the target. Tell your pet to switch to the target that you want it to hit.
I suspect that because this way is more flexible, it's probably for the best. But it just feels a little stilted and awkward. Like you have something selected and you use an ability called kill command while selecting that thing, and your pet just sort of ignores it and does it to something else instead. I think it would make more sense if it was sort of built in, slash pet attack slash kill command without having to explicitly say that. But the other one is that I've noticed. Well, actually, have you guys seen kill shot is sometimes not resetting?
I'm still seeing that, and I can't find a common trigger. I can't find if your last spell cast was this and then you kill command, it doesn't reset. I can't find a reason. Just periodically, you're burning a boss down. Kill command, it didn't reset. I only got one. God damn it! And It sucks because usually when it happens, I effectively lose the second global cooldown trying to hit it and looking down and wait, what happened? Oh, I just lost a second.
The other one that gets me. This is not so much relevant for rating, but at least when you're questing, doing your dailies, if you cast Men Pet, it's the old 1.5 second global cooldown, not the new 1 second global cooldown.
I never noticed that.
I noticed it because I never use it before the fight. I always use it after the start the fight. I'm like, whoops, we gotta. Oh god, this just feels like it takes forever. Yeah. But those are the only 3 bugs that I've discovered so far. Really, bugs that the game affecting bugs that I've discovered for me. Have you guys run across any of those?
No, I mean, that's the only one I've sort of noticed where it feels like I'm only getting 1 kill command in when I should be getting 2.
Kill command is the big bug that I've noticed that annoys the piss out of me.
BRK was saying about the barrage, right?
I was saying last week it was, does glaive throw work with misdirect? And yes, it does. I confirmed it when I was killing those stupid elks up on top of the mountain. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, the fatty goat steak.
Yeah. The creatures that there used to be a website that tracked maybe it was a Blizzard website that tracked what creature killed the most people that day, that week, that month. I wish that were still up and running. I bet Fatty Goat Steak Boys were killing more people. I see more skeletons up there than anywhere.
Actually,
I love it.
I do too, and this has just got to be something that hunters with our pets are well equipped to do. Because I never have. I'm like, I pop up there, and I'm like, okay, misdirect to my pet, and then I'll hit because I'm usually soloing as survival. And so I'm always like, okay, so I'll hit a serpent spread, and then I'll hit a barrage, and then just, a few more multi-shots, and, they're all down. But I see people getting knocked off cliffs. I see people just, you're up there, and you're like,
dying.
there's not a single pack free, and then, oh, hey, these ones are free. Someone was fighting them. Oh, they're dead. Sweet, they're mine now. People die to those because they try to pull the whole pack, and I guess
they suck. That's what it is. I mean, really.
Well, they don't have a tank with them like we do.
Misdirect in all that stuff and just mowing them down, and I'm skinning everything. Like, this guy's, would you like my spirit beast to throw you a heel? It's just awesome. I love that area.
I the only other thing that I might qualify as a little bit of a bug is there is some weird stuff about the behavior of barrage. And I tend to, if I can, flip to barrage anytime I'm doing like AoE stuff.
Yes, me too.
And barrage's distance is, its range is like 40 or 35 or whatever it is. But, it's almost like it recalculates it based on your target for the spread. Because that every now and then those things go like 100 yards away to pull some other stuff in.
They do.
And it's like I've gotten in the habit, like if I'm running a 5-man, I'll, toss my trap and toss my little frag belt bomb and, multi-shot and actually move past, like jump past them or jump disengage past them so I can barrage facing back the other way. So there's no chance it's going to ping other mobs because, wow, that occasionally goes crazy.
Yeah, it just seems to go off in whatever direction it feels like. I've gone into that room in Scholomance before the last boss where you got to go to the professor and get transformed into that Professor Putrescide looking guy. And I pulled extra packs in that room using barrage, and it'll be fun. It's usually like the last shot too. Like it'll go bang, 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 and then all of a sudden that one shot will just drift way off to the left and pull the next group. And
yeah, it's. I mean, so barrage is. You really, 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 really got to be careful about how you use it in a 5-man, or people will hate you for it, and justifiably so. And the solution I've kind of come up with, as long as we're not skipping things, normally I just jump past them because I can be in minimum range. That's fine. I just jump past them and turn around and barrage back the way I came.
But it's fun on some of these trash pulls in the dungeon. You can either do as BM or even survival, and I usually spec for this. I use barrage, thrill of the hunt, and then just for these trash and get this spam multi-shots and get barrage in there. That's a lot of fun. It's a lot of damage.
Thrill of the hunt is fantastic for barrage, or not for barrage, for survival.
You're not going to run into a tank in Pandaria who doesn't want to tank all the things. So one misdirect and just misdirect the whole room, and he's like, rock on, man. That's exactly what I was going to do.
But you'll run into a lot of healers that don't like it. I actually had that happen just yesterday. I was running a 5-man, and the tank charged in, and I barrage pulled, and I didn't pull anything I wasn't supposed to. But the healer clearly was not happy with how much stuff the tank wanted to tank. And actually, that was kind of true for most of the run. The healer kept yelling at the tank about, like, there's too many things, and people's health is getting low. And
all of the things.
Yeah, tank all the things. That Mr. Pandaria, that's its epithet. Because it's just nut. I actually, and I know you're not going to think I'm lying, but I'm not. I used a freezing trap on a mob in Temple of the James Serpent, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Look at him. I can keep him frozen the whole freaking fight. This is great. And the tank's like, why are you doing that? I tank all the things. All right, go ahead. I'll just throw away all my crowd control abilities because nobody cares.
I tried to do the exact same thing, and the tank went over. Yeah. We do have a question, though.
Oh, what's the question? Why don't you just tell us what the question is?
Turtle Hunter 1 says, Allie, can you ask the guys how they feel about the nonstop dailies? I feel they are burning me out of the game very quickly.
Oh, God. They are
There's
the worst.
An easy solution. Don't do them. Next question.
Well, I mean,
it's not that easy, though.
The the issue with them is twofold, right? Number one, it's hitting the Valor cap, and number two, it's getting your rep high enough to purchase the Valor rewards, right? This is the reason people feel compelled to do them. I feel no sympathy for people who are just like, a daily exists, so I have to do it. Whatever. But there's very legitimate in-game rewards for faster gearing associated with it, and it's a lot of dailies.
Yeah, and part of the thing, which I didn't realize either, because once I for example, the Claxy rep, once I hit Revered, I kind of stopped doing those dailies because I had unlocked essentially all the Valor gear. But then I found out that once you get Exalted, they'll give you a quest, and you can get a item level 489 ring. So I was like, so now I started grinding them back again, trying to get to Exalted. So, and I think the Golden Lotus is kind of like that too. You hit Exalted, and they'll give you a quest to get a neck piece that's also 489. Although you probably bought one with Valor at this point, but I didn't realize that. And I don't know if that's true for all the factions or not, but that's
and it's. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like this is the only way to get Valor, but it's the only way to spend your Valor. It's to get the rep with these guys. Actually, somebody, Ember Melganis in the chat room, has a fair point where he says it's not an option unless your guild is apathetic about optimization. If your guild is really trying to, progress quickly, and pretty much anybody who raids, they want to, they want you to gear up as quickly as you can. You're just going to gear up faster by doing them, and dear Lord, is it time consuming?
It's
no
ridiculous.
raid is going to fail because of a tiny level of eye level difference. Your raid is going to fail because you're targeting the wrong giant, because you didn't stand in the fire, or because you went AFK during the pull. One little piece of gear isn't going to make a difference. It just isn't.
It's not one piece of gear, though. It's 25 pieces of gear among 25 people. The average eye level, if nobody did dailies, would not be as high. And assuming you can control for that other stuff in the sense that, good raiders typically get into good guilds and they typically they raid well. Well, I mean, my point is, yes, both of these things can cause a raid to fail. Not enough gear is probably not as important as standing in the fire, but assuming that you're already not standing in the fire and you're already showing up on time and not AFK, at that point, the progression can sometimes come down to a gear check. Yeah, well, I know quite a few really strong players who've decided to switch to casual or quit the game altogether just because their guilds were pushing them so hard on the dailies.
Well, let me remind you of this. So basically, I guess I kind of agree with I agree with BRK more than Euripides, obviously. I agree with Euripides a little bit, where what the gear does is because the gear is multiplied by every person in your raid, and it's multiplied by every week that you're not doing dailies. What the gear does is it compensates for skill to some extent, and I think Greedy Goblin proved this really well in Wrath, where they formed a raid team that only wore blue gear. Only wore blue gear. They raided everything in Wrath. They killed. I mean, they did. They did like the third tier of raiding stuff still in blues. They didn't use any of the loot, and that's like, and most people would say, "Oh, there's no way that's possible. You don't have epics, and you don't have your epic gems, and your badass this and badass that." No, they proved that skill wins. And the other thing is, these weren't like top tier raiders. Some of these people hadn't raided before. They kind of came down and went, well, it just comes down to basic raiding skills. Don't take damage you don't need to take was 90% of it. And you look at their DPS logs were pathetic.
When was the last time we had a DPS check boss? Naxxramas?
Yeah.
No,
we have in Ulduar? Did we have one in Ulduar, a DPS check?
Every heroic instance has had a DPS check. Now, if you guys are talking about normal mode raids,
right now, the some people think maybe the second boss is a little bit of a DPS check. Maybe the third, because anyone that has the hard and rage timer, of course, is going to feel like a little bit of a DPS check.
If you want to look at DS, then look at Cataclysm. You had Ultraxin, you had Spine, you had all kinds of places that if Greedy Goblin had decided to try this experiment in a different tier that had hard DPS checks.
Well, keep in mind they weren't doing heroics.
Yes, that's true. They weren't doing heroics.
And their argument was normal mode raiding. You do not need this really high gear level. All that high gear level does is let you compensate for poorly skilled players.
Okay, but that's
players that just
that's beautiful.
Okay, but that's arguing that there's.
And it might allow you to do certain things too. Like you could actually some fights where you might be better off with 2 healers instead of 3, just to have the extra DPS. That gear probably allows you, will allow you to bring, say, a 3rd healer in there, as you say, to help compensate for skill and so forth. But it does allow some groups to do change their comp like that.
To be fair, and if you crunch the numbers, I'm confident you'll see that I'm right. That like half of the players out there are below average skill level.
They have to be.
It's terrible. Okay, let me just say this before we sign out on this issue, because I think you guys are making the mistake of assuming that these two things are connected. The success level of any raid is going to be the sum of its gear plus the sum of its skill, and by its skill I mean its executed skill. Like how well do the players, not how good can they be, how good are they executing? So if in any given pull, whether you succeed or fail, it's going to depend on how much gear you have and whether you're skilled. So you're right, gear can compensate for skill, skill can compensate for gear, but if you have both, you will be more likely to succeed, and if you have neither, you'll be much less likely to succeed.
And don't get me wrong, when I was running a raid team, you had to have your well-fed food. You had to have your flasks, because we knew that we didn't have a raid full of the best skilled people. And we wanted to compensate for our mistakes.
Even if you did have a raid full of the best skilled people, there's no reason not to do that other stuff, Just like if you have a raid full of the best skilled people, there's no reason not for them to do the dailies.
There's reasons not to do the dailies, and that reason is hours of your day every day.
Yes. That is the cost associated with that part of progression. But basically, at this point, it is part of progression. You have to do your dailies if you want to be in a progression guild. Depending on how serious it is, of course, if you're so skilled that you can walk in there with no rep at all and still perform as well as everybody else with much less gear, then that's probably fine. Your position in that guild, in that raid, is going to be dictated obviously by, supply and demand, your ability to produce the numbers, their need for you. But it's going to be, if you did do your dailies, or what would probably end up happening is, because it's not just an invisible market where nobody knows each other. This is some a situation where everybody knows each other. You'd have your class leaders, your guild leader, whatever, banging on your door every day, say, "Why aren't you doing dailies? Here, I'll go do them with you," kind of thing. And it's that kind of social pressure that's pushing people away from hardcore raiding. Or not even hardcore
more like
raiding.
A guild leadership problem than anything else.
Well, not in my guild, but it is a guild leadership problem sort of universally, because people feel that this is one of those ways that they can push further at the expense of something that doesn't require skill. It just requires time.
And time is the one thing that we cannot improve. We can improve our skill. We can't improve our time. It's just a fixed amount. Yeah.
Well, anyways, the reason I was mentioning all this is I personally believe that Blizzard designed the daily system badly. I think if they made it less of a chore to optimize your dailies, because right now, if you really wanted to do as much as you possibly could, you would just have to spend so much time every day doing everything. And the problem is that ceiling, there is no cap at which point it's no longer worth to do dailies except for the the gold reward or whatever. They need to make that point where it's no longer worth it, happen sooner. Either by taking a reputation away from the Valor, or making a reputation cap, making you choose between one of the factions to do at a time, or just something to make it so that any reasonable person with 45 minutes can get as much as they're ever going to get out of doing these dailies.
I have 2 exalted, 3. 3, really 2 that only count. Exalted reputations, and one of them I got a riding goat. That's where I spent my time. I grew carrots until I got a riding goat, and now I'm going to complain about Valor for dailies? I don't think so. I see a lot of cloud serpents out there, people running around wasting bandages on damaged cloud serpent babies. You're complaining about Valor? Give your serpent back. Get out there and help the ants.
Well, I don't know necessarily if those people are the ones complaining, but
I would bet they are, because they're the ones who love or hate to do dailies, so they're the ones doing them.
Well, I mean, I think that the real issue is having the Valor rewards associated with the rep. See, I don't mind the fact that it takes so long to hit the Valor cap with dailies. I feel like, hey, if you're doing heroics or you're raiding, you should get Valor faster and easier. So I don't.
Oh, sorry, no, that's not what I was talking about. I
But
was
it's-
talking about the fact that the rewards for Valor are hidden behind rep.
Right. I think
Right.
that is the issue, and it takes a huge chunk of time to get all those reps up to the point where you can spend all that value.
Well, it does. And I mean, you look at the Shadow Pan and the August Celestials, and before you can even start really earning those rep, you have to get, revered status
Revered.
with the Golden Lotus. And
And I'm
so-
still not revered with the August Celestials.
Yeah, I'm not.
I'm
That's
still
the
not
last
revered
one I
with the
have
Golden Lotus.
to get revered is the August Celestials, and that will just unlock the last of. That's the last of the Valor gear that I can quote unquote unlock.
Yeah.
And even then, it's. I forget what they offer for hunters, but I was remember looking at it and saying, it's not even worthwhile because chances are I'm going to get those items off the bosses, those the boots and whatever else they offer. I'm going to get them off the bosses before I get the rep done.
I don't know.
offer-
It's the boots for the August Celestials, and the thing with them, I think, is I feel like it's because so many of the other ones offer you gear slots that are set slots.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, I don't really care about that because eventually I'm going to have my set chest and my set shoulders and my set whatever. I'm like, but feet, if I don't get lucky with a drop, I could see spending my Valor points to get some feet to wear in the meantime.
Yeah, but the feet drop off the second boss in Mogashan Vault, so chances are, even if you're doing normal, you're going to see that boss more often than you are some of the latter ones.
Okay, that's
so
true.
the odds of it dropping are probably a little bit higher than some of the others. But that I would think if you're rating now, you might end up seeing them as a drop before you reach revered status with that faction.
That's true enough.
But the other thing too, in 5.1, the need to get Valor capped just seems to be, it's always going to be there. And even though they aren't going to necessarily introduce new gear, they're going to introduce the ability to upgrade some of your existing items.
Now, and let me say, the first thing I saw when I saw 5.1 is there's going to be new dailies, yay! And I was like, just freaking kill you. That is not a... But then I thought about it, and I was like, never mind. I kind of like the fact that there's more dailies because it's easier for me to put aside a big chunk of time on one day than a substantial chunk of time on every day. Like, I would like the fact that I could take like a Saturday afternoon and get 300 Valor points worth of dailies. That would be awesome. Then I wouldn't need to do dailies for the rest of the week. So I like that. I'm only not going to like it if you have to get that rep to a certain point in order to get your gear. And to be fair, in every expansion before Mists of Pandaria, there was 2 factions we had to grind rep with for our Helm enchant and our shoulder enchant. And the worst of those was Sons of Hodor.
Oh,
But-
God.
Especially before it got nerfed down, right? Back when we originally did it at the beginning, it was god-awful to get exalted with them, and you had to be exalted to get the good enchant. But, so to be fair, throughout the history, there have always been 2 factions we had to get rep with. But now it's a lot more than 2.
And it takes longer.
And
It does take longer because we had the Tabard system for most of them.
Right, so we could just run our heroics and bing, 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 bing.
And now they look like ants.
Or wasps, I guess, depending. So, I think we're probably over time, although I wasn't
We
here for
are.
the beginning.
We
Okay.
are, in fact, over time. We started right on time. It was nice.
Good
Should have been.
times. Well, I can't stay around for a post-show, but if you guys can, I suspect that would probably be popular.
I actually need to take off as well. This is as much post show as I can do. But so Euripides,
same
you're going to
here.
hit the outro, or is Ollie going to be you?
Always going to have to be me. I don't have the lines in front of me, and I have a terrible memory.
And given this is the 149th time, I can understand why you haven't had those memorized yet. After you're doing this.
I'm really not that smart, to be honest.
You have been listening to episode 149 of the Hunting Party Podcast. Euripides, go for it.
This is Alexander from the...
From OutDPS, WowInsider.com, and the Call to Auction Podcast.
And I'm Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
And this is Frosttime from Warcraft Hunters Union, BioInsider, and Frosttime WHU on Twitter.
And I'm Ollie Sonder. Check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or add our RSS feed to your reader. Links are available in the show notes.
And if you like us, please don't be shy about leaving us a review on iTunes, especially one where you mention how uncommonly good-looking Frosttime is.
You can submit a title for this week's show by emailing us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com and have your name mangled on the air by professionals.
Who are these professionals?
Yeah, right. Fair, good point. Speaking of being professional here, stay thirsty, my friends. Remember to drink your dark blue lager.
Don't forget to spare and neuter your feral druid.
For the Horde.
And don't forget to pay your dues, traitor.
That spare and neuter your feral druid was the only part I remembered, but I didn't want to open with that because I knew people would realize. All right. Well, BRK, thanks again for coming on the show, and sorry I was late, guys.
Oh, that was awesome to come on. If you want me to stick around for the outro, or you guys all bugging out, that's cool too. Whatever you need.
We're all bugging out.
They're all leaving, so they're gonna.
I don't know about Dark Brew.
Yeah, no, I was gonna. I have about 15 minutes here. I can devote to that. So why don't we stick around for 15
I'll
minutes?
stay with Dark Brew, and he and I will talk about Hunters for a change.
Awesome. All right, guys, have fun.
Talk to you guys later.
Cheers. All right, thanks, Ellie.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hit capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top the meters every fight. Rated endgame, dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Kil'jaeden, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnar.